today's session titled Comprovisation. We have 5 papers, and we'll be beginning with Giovanni Santini of Hong Kong Baptist University, a talk called Linear Live Generated Interface in Occasion Environments in Augmented Reality. Welcome, Giovanni.
So, I'm going to present what is part of my research project at Hong Kong Baptist University. So, live-generated interface and occasion environment in augmented reality. And let's start from the end of the acronym. So, what is augmented reality? Anyone more or less has an idea, I guess, but just to quickly refresh, augmented reality blends virtual and real world together. And so in this photo you can see very well on your right side there is augmented reality, on the left side real reality. So for now what has been done in music applying augmented reality is essentially musical education. So I just want briefly to show a picture from a study conducted at Stanford by Stasnik and others. Piano lens. So, as you can see, this happens in real time and requires a head-mounted device, see-through device. Guess it's HoloLens, 90%. So you see there is a kind of piano roll, a kind of mini piano roll, but it is in 3D, and it arrives directly on the keys. And there is a red line here, which is a kind of now. So that is the moment in which things should happen. And you see that these blocks are intended kind of to sign when the sound is beginning and then when the sound ends. And the indication is exactly in correspondence of the key. So it's kind of gestural notation, but with the MIDI shape. It's kind of strange. There are other kind of studies still related to education, and especially for piano, and they are all more or less in this same shape. And there is one for viola, one for electric bass, 3 or 4 for guitar, and one for conducting. And especially guitar was probably the first instrument to start, since there is a literature from 2005. All the other studies have grown only in the past 2 or 3 years because, of course, there has been a kind of technological sudden development, especially thanks to HoloLens. Now, let's come to my project. So I wanted to have a very simple environment. This is really simple, actually. As you can see, you need only a router. I mean, you don't even need a router, but that's a safe way to go. A router that provides connection through other 3 devices. One is a streaming box, because actually all the content, all the graphic content in augmented reality is going to be projected through a projector. There is a laptop, which is dealing mainly with sound processing. And the core, let's say the device that runs the AR application is actually an iPhone. And I'm not saying smartphone, I really say iPhone because the programming framework I'm using allows only to compile on iOS. So we are still in a moment in the development of AR where we cannot just say, okay, you compile whatever on whatever. You have really one protocol for one device, another protocol for another device, one compatibility issue for one device, and so on and so forth. So, but once we have these devices connected together, we need some performance. So, actually, the minimum setup requires 3 performers, 1 iPhone performer, of course, 1 laptop player, and 1 instrumentalist. because his sound is going to be captured and processed on the left one. And it's also going to provide other kind of reactions we are going to see later. Okay, so let's start with the iPhone performer. I want to show you what appears directly on the iPhone screen. And there is also an audio. The audio part is provided by the laptop connected through OSC. Ah, okay.
You have to route your audio to the headphone jack.
Sorry. That's the only way. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, can you send your sound through this instead? Is that sound settings?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You want to try this
Again?
one more time? Let's see.
Because this is the way they usually send
Okay.
on the headphones, so it should go there. Yeah, almost. Okay, so anyway, you get more or less an idea of how does it sound. But how does it sound is not really important. I mean, it is. But that was not the point. So the point was not to, just to let you know how does it sound. What I wanted to show is more how the sound is produced, which is a bit different. Okay, so the sound is produced in a certain way, and then it will sound in 1,000 different ways. So what happens here essentially is that the iPhone player is actually using his iPhone to go around, and when he presses the lowest part of the screen, he can draw on the space according to his movement in space. He can draw different bodies, let's say different virtual bodies with different colors, different particle effects, and as you can hear, different colors are linked to different sound libraries. It means you can draw something, but that something becomes also a kind of interface for it. Okay? So it is an interface. It is gestural notation, because if I want to repeat one sound, I have to do exactly one specific trajectory. Otherwise, I get another kind of result. And therefore, it is a kind of virtual tangible score. So just to recap a bit, what is a tangible score is something like that. It is a hybrid between digital instrument and score, and it is an interface which has a graphical score physically incorporated on it, and it is in a form on an instrument. So this is a definition by Enrique Thomas. And of course, there is also, this is not everything, so tangible score usually has also an electronic part, which works with concatenative synthesis, etc., etc. But the main point is that you have a physical device, a physical interface, which is actually also a kind of indication what you have to do, or a suggestion of what to do in order to get a particular result. So in the case of augmented reality, we don't have anything tangible, I mean physically tangible, but still you have a kind of physical interaction between different virtual bodies. And the form of the instrument you're going to play is also the way you have to play it in order to obtain a particular result. Now, more specifically on the generation of sound. So you have a router which is connecting the iPhone and the laptop, and they are exchanging OSC messages. Now, if you recall, in the center of the scene, there was a small green sphere. That small green sphere is what indicates the center of the point of view, 50 centimeters in front. So it's like going around with something fixed in front of your device. But of course you don't have anything. But you can fake a physical interaction. With what? With the other bodies we have seen, so the yellow, the blue, and the red one. And once you hit the yellow body, let's say, with the green sphere, a sample in a sound library is triggered on the laptop and is played there. The same with another virtual body, the same with the other category. Each category is linked to a different sample. But of course it can sound however you want, and that's why I said it was not that important how did it sound. Okay? I'm still a musician, so I know it is important. Now, the second person who is going to participate in the performance is the laptop player. So he's handling something like this, but it can be something else. I mean, I usually change the patch from one performance to another. Also because actually the number and the kind of instrumentalist is not fixed. So if you have a flute and a guitar, you're going to change something with respect to having drum set and piano. That's clear. Now, beyond that, he has also a couple of other very important roles. One is triggering between AR and VR mode. What is the difference? VR mode doesn't render the camera input. I'm not going to speak too much about this, but it's just that it makes easier in some cases to read just the graphic indications. And we are going to see a bit later why this matters. And the third thing, and we are going to see also later why this matters, it enables the creation of violet bodies. So this is, so far we have seen 3 categories, right? And now I'm introducing one more. And I'm introducing it now because it works very differently from the others. So. So, these virtual bodies are created according to sound analysis taken from the instrument input. And this sound analysis is performed according to 3 sound descriptors. What I used here was spectral magnitude for the depth, so z-axis, noisiness for the x-axis, and spectral centroid for the y-axis. So they are rendered in real time, and they depend from the instrument input, and they are linked to the sample that generated them. So of course there is also some kind of envelope follower. And now we come to the instrumentalists. They are doing what? They are reading what the iPhone performer is creating. So actually, what the iPhone performer is continuously creating is a gestural score for him, as we saw before, but it is also live-generated, three-dimensional graphic notation in augmented reality. So they are reading it according to, let's say, a principle of just reading through a trajectory. I'm not going too far with that. And they are required to mimic the sounds that are triggered from those bodies. So, of course, there are limitations because, for example, in this case, the samples are magnets scratched inside a piano frame, marble sculpture that is played, and then just a resonance gotten through from saxo schlau, which is a kind of self-fit instrument. Of course, if you have a guitar that has to imitate that, you have to find any kind of strange extended technique to do that, and you will not accomplish it. But that's a part of the story, let's say. And also makes everything more coherent. So you have a kind of notation which tells you how do you have to read it somehow. Also, the performers are playing, and sometimes, according to the will of the laptop player, their sound is used in order to create some additional notations, which are the violet bodies we saw before. And in this case, so the instrumentalists are reading this graphic notation, they are playing, and their way of playing is feeding back inside the notation itself. So it's what I call, let's say, notational feedback. So you see, he is speaking inside the microphone, and the sound analysis is going to create also. From that. Now, what about the audience? So the recording is a bit dark, sorry for that. But essentially what happens is that the audience itself, even if it's not actively participating to the performance, can be involved because the iPhone performer is free to go anywhere in the performance venue. Actually, he can even go outside, but of course you start getting some later. Anyway, this means, because of actually the iPhone has a camera and you are seeing on the screen what is on the camera plus the augmented reality stuff, you can even have the audience itself kind of interacting, at least visually, with virtual buttons. So let's see just an excerpt. So there is a guy more or less here with the iPhone. And here you see also the performers looking at the screen in order to read the graphic. I'm sorry we cannot hear anything, but like this stuff. Okay. So now I want to point out what is maybe for me the most important part, or let's see, the most important perspective that this environment can provide for a composer, for an ensemble, whatever. And this idea of compositional ecosystem. So I'm going to present some diagrams. They are extreme simplification of what is real life. It means any kind of this diagram can be criticized somehow, I know it, but still. So I'm going to go through, let's say, a kind of the stylization of a normal score in common Western graphic notation, musical notation, sorry. Then a graphic score like Cage variation 2. So I take one example because if I speak about graphic notation, graphic score, there are thousands of different examples. So I take one example just to kind of narrow down a bit the situation. Then an animated score like Schaeffer's Terraformation, and then I will speak about linear. So let's go. Normal scores is like this. There is a composer. The composer writes a score. The score is finished after the composer has worked on it. That's clear. And then comes the interpreter or many interpreters, and they know how to codify it, and then there is a result. The result is 1, more or less. It's never 1. But we assume it is 1 in the fact that we can, let's say, foresee the 90% of the results. Then there is interaction between performers, there is different interpretations, but still. Now, if we go to a graphic score, like Cage Variation 2, the composer makes the score exists. When the score exists, each interpreter can give many, many different results. Now, so I just present briefly this piece because maybe it's not in the knowledge of all of you. So this is a large generated piece where there are 3 different layers of notation. So there is this gradient notation, which indicates the position of the bow. There is this normal staff notation, which indicates the notes and the pressure of the left hand of the strings. And then there is this fret notation, which is still about the position of the left hand. Okay, so of course, each layer of notation is actually created real time according to a specific algorithm, decisional algorithm. So each performance is a bit different. Same rules, different output. So there is a composer programmer who does the algorithm. The algorithm produces one score, let's say in one performance. The score develops in time, and there are different interpreters. Each interpreter reads it and can provide a different result. So in the case of Schaeffer's terraformation, actually you can kind of foresee the results still because it's very specific. But I mean, anyway, there is a certain level of freedom. Then the same algorithm could output the score B. So a different score. The score develops in time and still. Then we have score C, and then we have infinite scores. So there is a kind of multiplication, okay? But there is still this kind of top-down relation. I mean, even if in animated score, this relation could not be really, could change. So, for example, there could be the composer that uses the algorithm in order to create the score, etc. Anyway. Now, in linear, we have the composer programmer who does the algorithm. And then there is the iPhone performer that uses the algorithm on his iPhone. And the interaction creates score A, let's say. Score A develops in time. And as we saw, it is a gestural notation for the iPhone performer. It springs back to its creator. But then also there are different instrumentalists that are going to read this and give different results. Each result can be recorded and can feed back into the algorithm itself. And then we have interpreter B, and that can be the same stuff. And then we have score B. So this is what I call compositional ecosystem, because as you see, there is no really a top-down relation, except for the composer programmer that does things in advance, but it's just kind of creating the prerequisites for the ecosystem to exist. And then anything else is just a mutual interrelation between the different figures that are taking part into the work. So some limitations are just positional tracking, that's okay, it's just technical stuff. Limited quality and quantity of solutions, because I'm still in development. And it's not for, as I said, until now, it's not for pre-composed composition. So I have another part of my project that is dealing with that, but not this one. And for now, it's not thought to be used by other composers, but maybe no one is interested, so. Well, anyway, just to recap, there are 2 different approaches to notation: virtual tangible scores and animated scores with notational feedback. There is a compositional ecosystem, and I want to close with just a short personal opinion that ER creates really new possibilities. I mean, this kind of interrelation is, I'm quite sure it's not really possible without this kind of interaction with reality. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for a few questions. Curious if you could say something about the pedagogy for the iPhone person, how you train them, how they learn to use this. Is it intuitive? Do you give them instructions?
So yeah, it is quite intuitive after a while. Let's say the first impact is not really very intuitive. What I usually do, I let them all use the iPhone anyway. Every kind of performer, even the ones that, I mean, even the normal instrumentalists, let's say. And just to have an idea of what happens. And then I just ask them to, I give some suggestions on different techniques to use. So what techniques should be linked to different bodies according to the way they sound. And then I just ask them to read the trajectories without giving further indications. Usually, in my opinion at least, it works after a couple of fragments.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Giovanni.